When we talk about addiction, there's just so much confusion, so much judgment out there. It's this struggle that touches millions of lives, but honestly, it's so often misunderstood. We hear all this talk about willpower, about making the right choices, but what if there's more to it? What if the story is way more complex? What if, for some people, the risk is actually woven right into their biology? So what is the real story? Is it really a choice? Or is it something written in our DNA? I mean, that's a question that hits close to home for so many people, right? So today, we're going to dig into the science and see if we can find some real answers.
All right, so first up, a question of inheritance. We've all heard people say that addiction runs in the family, but what does that actually mean, scientifically? Let's break it down.
Okay, before we dive deeper, let's just get on the same page with two key terms. First, you've got genetics. That's the study of our genes. Then there's heredity. That's the process, how those genes actually get passed down from parents to kids. So one's the science, the other is the passing down. Simple as that. So the big question is, how much does this stuff really matter? Well, the research is pretty clear. Genetics can account for a whopping 40 to 60% of a person's risk for addiction. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That is a huge piece of the puzzle. But, and this is super important, it's not the whole story. It's a major factor for sure, but it is absolutely not your destiny. And that brings us to a really crucial point. Having a genetic predisposition, it is not a life sentence. A great way to think about it is like this. Your genetics might load the gun, but it's your environment and your choices that can pull the trigger. Okay, so if genetics loads the gun, what exactly pulls the trigger? That's what we're getting into next, the actual science of vulnerability. Look, it's almost never just one thing. The science really points to this three-factor model. You've got your genes, right? The loaded gun we just talked about. Then you've got environmental factors, stuff like ongoing stress, trauma, or even just how easy it is to get your hands on substances. And finally, there's the behavior itself, repeated exposure. When you mix all three of those together, that's when you can get a perfect storm. Let's get specific for a minute so you can see exactly how this works. Let's talk about something called the dopamine D2 receptor. It's a really key part of your brain's reward system. The bit that makes you feel good when you eat great food or hang out with friends. Well, some people are born with a genetic deficiency here. This means they're just less sensitive to those natural pleasures. It can make them search for something more intense just to feel okay. And that's a biological vulnerability, not some kind of character flaw. And then there's that third piece of the puzzle, repeated exposure. Think of it this way. Every time someone uses a substance, it's like they're carving a path in their brain. And the more they use it, the deeper that path gets. Eventually, that pathway becomes a superhighway that physically changes the brain's wiring. The brain's whole reward system gets hijacked. It starts putting this substance above everything else. Food, family, even their own safety. That's the biology behind that compulsive, out-of-control behavior. So when you put it all together, the genetics, the environment, the repeated use, the picture becomes crystal clear. Addiction is a chronic brain disease. It is not a moral failing. It is not a lack of willpower. And you know what? Understanding that is the absolute key to changing how we treat it. But here's the thing. All of this science, it actually brings us to a place of hope. Because once we see addiction for what it is, a brain disease, we can start to treat it in a completely new and much more effective way. And this modern approach is really driven by a simple, powerful mission. It's summed up perfectly by Dr. Indra Sidambi. She's a real pioneer in this field and the founder of RecoveryCNT. Her goal is making addiction treatment accessible to every individual who needs it. And that one word, accessible, that's everything. It's all about tearing down the walls that have kept people from getting help for way too long. So what does that actually look like? Let's compare the old way to the new way. Traditional inpatient programs, they often made you drop your entire life. That can actually make the stigma worse, and it creates this bubble that's tough to pop when you go back to the real world. But the new outpatient models, like the one at RecoveryCNT, they're all about integrating treatment into your actual life. This way, you're learning to deal with real-world triggers as they happen, all while keeping up with work and family. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit more on RecoveryCNT as an example. How does this modern approach actually help someone who's on this journey? Well, the whole goal is to get rid of the barriers. So instead of some one-size-fits-all program, the treatment is totally personalized. And instead of having to put your life on hold, it's accessible, so you can keep up with work, school, family, all of it. It also helps fight that stigma, because it treats addiction like any other chronic disease. Plus, it's affordable, because they're in network with all the major insurance providers. And maybe most importantly, They focus on immediate relief from withdrawal. Because, let's be honest, the healing can't really start until that physical crisis is over. So, what does all this mean for you, or maybe for someone you care about? It means that there is a clear path forward, a supportive path, a modern path to recovery. And listen, getting started is way simpler than you probably think. It really just boils down to 3 steps. Step 1, make the call. It's completely confidential. Step 2, have a consultation where they create a plan that's just for you. And step 3, start your treatment without having to drop everything in your life. The whole process is designed to make you feel empowered, not overwhelmed. So if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this: you are not alone. And real compassionate help is out there. It's here. If you or anyone you know is struggling, please don't wait. Reach out. You can call RecoveryCNT at 1-732-484-9661. Again, that's 1-732-484-9661. Or you can visit them online at RecoveryCNT.com. Taking that first step, that's how you start taking your life back.